Before we start, if you enjoy the story, please leave a like and check if you're subscribed. Rhett Hawking cut the engines at 3,000 meters, letting the survey ship fall through Epsilon Grave 7's atmosphere on momentum alone. The descent gave him time to scan, and what the sensors showed made his jaw tighten. Wreckage on the northern beach, still smoking despite the salt spray. Recent. The metal hull gleamed with an opalescent sheen he recognized. Vin diplomatic craft, worth more than he'd earn in 5 years of surveying Deathworlds for the Colonial Expansion Corps. He brought the ship down 200 meters from the wreckage, landing struts biting into black sand that would be frozen solid in 6 hours when the temperature dropped 40 degrees. The planet's 28-hour rotation created weather hell, scorching days, Arctic nights, and the transition storms that had killed 3 survey teams before the Corps classified it as viable only for automated mining. Rhett grabbed his field kit and cracked the hatch. Heat slammed into him, dry and vicious, carrying the mineral stink of volcanic soil. His boots hit the sand, and he saw her. She knelt beside a tidal pool, blue skin stark against the dark beach, pink hair whipping in the wind like silk fire. Feline ears flattened against her skull, and a long tail curled protectively around her side. She wore the remains of a silver flight suit, torn at the shoulder, dark stains spreading across her ribs. When she turned, her amber eyes went wide. "Don't," he said, watching her hand drift towards something at her belt. She froze, studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Her ears swiveled forward, tracking his movements as he approached slowly, hands visible. "Human," she breathed, and the word carried equal parts fascination and horror. "Rhett Hawking, Corps Surveyor," he said, stopping 10 feet away. "You're injured." "You landed here voluntarily," she said, ignoring his statement. Her voice held the melodic accent of high nobility, the kind who thought Deathworlds were cautionary tales rather than real places. "On Epsilon Grave 7. "It's my job." She stared at him like he'd admitted to juggling plasma charges. Her tail lashed once, betraying agitation. Her face didn't show. "My shuttle malfunctioned," she said finally. "The navigation system failed during atmospheric entry. I've been here 37 hours. Rhett's gaze dropped to her side. The stain was spreading. "You need medical attention." "I'm aware." He moved closer. She tensed but didn't retreat, though her hand remained near her belt. Up close, she was stunning in a way that hit him like a physical blow. Elegant bone structure, lips the color of dawn, eyes that held depthless intelligence. The feline features should have seemed alien, but instead, they struck him as hypnotic, wild, dangerous in a way that made his blood heat despite the circumstances. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her wound. She hesitated, then nodded once. Her ears stayed flat. Rhett knelt beside her, close enough to catch her scent, something like night-blooming flowers and ozone. The flight suit had melted where shrapnel pierced it, and the wound beneath oozed blood too red to be human. He opened his field kit, pulling out a universal coagulant. "This will hurt," he said. "I've survived worse." He applied the gel. Her breath hitched, but she didn't flinch. Rhett worked quickly, fingers steady despite the awareness of her proximity, the heat radiating from her skin, the way her tail brushed his leg when it moved. Professional. He needed to stay professional. "You're far from vein space," he said, sealing the wound with synthetic skin. "I could say the same about you. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Her gaze tracked over his face, lingering on the scar that cut through his eyebrow. "Humans," she murmured. "They said your species seeks out death. I thought it was propaganda." "We call it opportunity. We call it insanity." Rhett finished the bandaging and sat back on his heels. "What's your name?" Another hesitation, Sola Venara. The house name made him pause. Venara, one of the ruling families in the coalition. A noble then, not just any diplomat. "Well, Sola Venara, your shuttle's destroyed," he said. "The core's intact, but you won't be flying it anywhere. My ship can get us off-world, but the navigation system took damage on approach. I need parts." She turned toward her wreckage, ears swiveling. "The diplomatic craft carries redundant systems. If your ship is compatible." "It will be. I can adapt most tech." "Then we have a mutual need," she said, rising with fluid grace despite her injury. She stood close, chin lifted to meet his eyes. Even wounded, she moved like water, like violence wrapped in silk. Rhett stood, very aware of the shrinking distance between them. How long until the next weather shift? She glanced at the sky, reading patterns he couldn't see. 5 hours, perhaps less. The winds are already changing. Then we work fast. They moved toward her shuttle, and Rhett felt her watching him, studying the way he moved across terrain that should be killing them both. The sand burned through his boots, but he'd walked worse. The air scalded his lungs, but he'd learned to breathe shallow and steady. This planet wanted them dead, and he found that almost comforting. At least it was honest. Sola stopped at the shuttle's torn hull. I can access the navigation core, but the power couplings are fused. Do you have cutting tools? In my ship. I'll begin removing the external paneling. Rhett watched her reach into the wreckage, movements precise despite her injury. Her tail balanced her, flowing with her body's motion, and he caught himself staring at the curves beneath the torn flight suit. Focus. He turned toward his ship, but her voice stopped him. Rhett Hawking. He looked back. Thank you, she said, for the medical attention. My people. We don't expect kindness from humans. Your people think we're crazy. Yes, she agreed, amber eyes holding his, but perhaps that's not entirely a criticism. Something passed between them, hot and electric as the air itself. Then the wind shifted, and cold bit through the heat like a blade. Sola's ears flattened again, and Rhett felt the hair on his neck rise. That's not supposed to happen for hours, she said. Rhett looked at the sky. Clouds boiled on the horizon, black and green and moving fast, too fast. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in 30 seconds. Get to my ship, he said, now. The core, forget it, move. They ran. Sola matched his pace despite her wound, legs eating distance with predatory speed. The wind screamed behind them and snow began to fall. Actual snow mixed with ash and something that stung like acid. Rhett's ship sat ahead, hatch open, and the temperature plummeted so fast his breath fogged. Sola stumbled. Rhett caught her waist, felt the heat of her skin through torn fabric, and pulled her forward. They hit the ramp together as hail hammered down, ice chunks the size of fists cracking against the hull. He slammed the hatch control, metal sealed with a hiss that barely cut the wind's howl. Inside, emergency lights bathed them in red. Sola leaned against the bulkhead, chest heaving, pink hair plastered to her face and neck. Ice crystals melted on her blue skin, running down her throat and disappearing beneath her collar. That was a mega storm, she said, voice shaking. They don't occur during warm cycles. Apparently they do. The ship groaned as wind battered it. Rhett moved to the cockpit, checking structural integrity. Green across the board, but the external temperature read -30 and dropping. In 2 minutes, they'd gone from desert heat to Arctic freeze. Sola followed him, moving into the cramped space. She was close again, unavoidable in the small cockpit, and now they were trapped together. Her scent filled the air, and when she leaned past him to study the readouts, her hair brushed his shoulder. How long will this last, he asked. She analyzed the storm patterns, tail swaying with thought. Based on the pressure systems, minimum 70 hours, possibly longer. 70 hours, 3 days locked in a survey ship built for one, with a woman who looked at him like he was both terrifying and fascinating, whose every movement sent heat pooling in his gut despite the deadly cold outside. Well, Rhett said, I hope you're not claustrophobic. Sola turned to him, close enough that he could see flecks of violet in her amber eyes. I hope you're not either, human. The ship shuddered. Outside, the storm screamed like something alive, and inside, the temperature climbed several degrees that had nothing to do with the heating system. The ship's heating system cycled with a rhythmic hum that filled the silence. Rhett pulled emergency rations from storage while Sola explored the cramped space, tail swishing as she examined the Spartan accommodations, one narrow bunk, a fold-down table, a hygiene unit barely large enough to turn around. You live in this, she said, for months at a time. She traced fingers along scarred metal where he'd welded repairs. Humans truly are incomprehensible. Rhett set rations on the table. Your people prefer luxury? We prefer not dying alone on hostile worlds. Yet here you are, Her ears flicked back. The torn flight suit gaped wider now, revealing the curve of her shoulder, the elegant line of her collarbone. She noticed his gaze and made no move to cover herself. "Circumstances are complicated," she said. Outside, something struck the hull hard enough to rock the ship. Sola's hand shot out, gripping his arm for balance. Her fingers burned against his skin, and she held on longer than necessary. "We should eat," Rhett said, voice rough. "You've lost blood." They sat across the narrow table, knees nearly touching. Sola examined the ration pack with skepticism, but hunger won. She ate with precise movements, stealing glances at him between bites. "Why survey Deathworlds?" she asked. "There are thousands of habitable planets unclaimed." "Because everyone else is afraid of them." "Fear is rational. So is ambition." She leaned forward. "Your species has been part of the galactic community for less than 50 standard years. You should be grateful for safe colony worlds, not seeking out planets that kill everything." "Maybe that's exactly why we do it," Rhett said. "We don't wait for permission. We push forward." "You mean you're reckless?" "I mean we're survivors." Her tail curled around the table leg, amber eyes catching the emergency lighting like molten gold. "Is that what you tell yourself when you wake up alone in ships like this?" "I don't need to tell myself anything. I know what I am." "And what's that?" The word hung between them, heavy. Sola's gaze dropped to his mouth, then back to his eyes. The heating system kicked higher, and sweat began to bead on his skin. "Your wound needs checking," he said, standing abruptly. "It's fine. Let me see it anyway." She stood, and in the tight quarters they were chest to chest. Rhett felt heat radiating from her, smelled flowers and electricity. Her breathing quickened beneath the damaged suit. Slowly she unzipped the flight suit to her waist, peeling it down her arms. Beneath she wore only a thin undergarment. The synthetic skin held, but bruising showed dark purple against blue. Rhett forced himself to focus, not on the way her skin seemed to glow in red light, not on the curve of her waist or how her tail swayed. He pressed gently around the wound. "Does this hurt?" he asked. "Yes. You should rest." "So should you." Their eyes met. Her hand came up, fingertips brushing the scar through his eyebrow with feather-light pressure. "How did you get this?" she asked. "Mining accident on Hela 4, cave-in." "You could have died." "Didn't." Her fingers traced down his temple, along his jaw. "Do you fear death, Rhett Hawking?" "Everyone fears death." "Then why court it?" "Because the alternative is never living." She leaned closer, breath ghosting across his lips. "My people believe humans are addicted to adrenaline, that you seek danger because your biology demands it." "Maybe we do," he said, hand finding her hip, fingers splaying across heated skin. "What's your excuse?" "I don't have one." The ship lurched as wind hammered it. They stumbled together, Rhett's back hitting the bulkhead with Sola pressed against him, soft and dangerous and intoxicating. Her hands flattened on his chest, feeling his heart pound. "This is unwise," she whispered. "Probably. My people we're not like humans. We don't feel things the same way. How do you feel things?" She pressed closer, voice dropping to something raw. "Carefully, quietly. We're taught control from childhood. Emotion is weakness in my culture." "That sounds lonely." Her ears flattened, and for a moment she looked vulnerable. "It is." Rhett's hand threaded through pink hair that felt like silk. "You don't feel controlled right now?" "No," she admitted, "I don't." The distance between their mouths became nothing. Heat bloomed everywhere they touched, and when she kissed him it was fierce and desperate, like she'd been holding back for years. Her tail wrapped around his leg, pulling him tighter, and Rhett groaned into her mouth. She tasted like electricity and hunger, and the way she moved against him spoke of need that matched his own. His hands explored her back, feeling muscles shift beneath impossibly soft skin, and she arched into his touch with a sound that sent fire through his veins. Then she pulled back, breathing hard, eyes wild. "We can't," she said, but her hand still gripped his shirt. We just met. The circumstances are extreme." "I'm thinking very clearly." "I'm nobility, you're human. My people would—" She stopped, ears swiveling back. Would what? She released him, stepping back and pulling the flight suit up, though she didn't zip it. It doesn't matter. Once we leave this planet, we'll part ways. Is that what you tell yourself? It's what I know. But her tail betrayed her, still curved toward him. Rhett moved to the cockpit, needing distance. The storm still raged, temperature at -40. Inside, the air felt thick enough to cut. The bunk's yours, he said. I'll take the floor. That's unnecessary. It's necessary. Silence stretched. Then her voice came softer. Why did you help me on the beach? You didn't know who I was. You are dangerous. That's not what I meant. Rhett turned to face her. She stood in dim light, hair falling around her shoulders, flight suit hanging loose, looking every inch the noble she claimed to be, and simultaneously like something wild. I helped you because leaving you would have made me less human, he said. And because when I saw you on that beach, the first thing I thought was that you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen on a planet trying to kill me. Her breath caught. Rhett, get some rest. We've got 70 hours to survive before we can even think about getting off this rock. She nodded, then moved to the bunk. She didn't remove the flight suit, just curled on her side, her tail draped over the edge, swaying gently. Rhett settled on the floor back against the bulkhead. The metal dug into his spine, but he'd slept in worse conditions. Rhett, she said into the darkness. Yeah, thank you for being honest. Always am. That's rare in my experience. He wanted to ask what she meant, what brought a Venara noble to a Deathworld. But exhaustion pulled at him, and eventually sleep claimed them both. Rhett woke to silence. The storm had faded to occasional gusts, and pale light filtered through the viewport. Temperature had risen to -10. Sola stood at the viewport, arms wrapped around herself. She'd repaired the flight suit somewhat, though it still showed damage. It's beautiful, she said without turning, in a terrifying way. Outside, ice covered everything. The black sand had transformed into a frozen wasteland. How long do we have? He asked, moving beside her. 6 hours, maybe 7, then the temperature swings again. Then we move, get that navigation core, and fix my ship. She turned to him, something softer in her expression. About last night. Don't, he said. Don't apologize for something that felt right. I wasn't going to apologize. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. I was going to say it scared me, how much I wanted it, how much I wanted you. Sola. But you're right. Survival first. She squeezed his hand once, then released it. We can discuss complications after we're off this planet. Rhett grabbed his tools and thermal gear. As he suited up, he watched her move through the ship with growing confidence, no longer the stranded noble, but a woman adapting with grace and intelligence. They would retrieve the navigation core, they would repair his ship, and then they'd face whatever came next. Together, the thermal suits hung loose on Sola's frame, designed for human proportions. Rhett adjusted the seals while she stood still, watching him with those amber eyes that caught every expression. This will keep you alive for 2 hours in the cold, he said. After that, we're gambling. I've noticed humans enjoy gambling. Her tail threaded through the suit's modified port, swaying as he secured the final seal. Outside, the ice fields stretched endlessly under the pale sun that would cook them alive in 6 hours. They crossed the frozen beach in silence. Sola moved beside him with predatory grace, even in the bulky suit. Her shuttle sat ahead, half buried in ice. Rhett pulled cutting tools from his pack. I'll open the access panel. You guide me to the core. She knelt beside him close enough that their shoulders touched. The navigation system sits behind the main reactor coupling. It's delicate. The torch flared blue, melting through ice and metal. Steam hissed around them, and Sola's hand steadied his elbow. The touch sent heat through layers of insulation. There, she said, pointing to exposed circuitry. Rhett reached into the gap, fingers searching blindly. Metal scraped his glove, and then he felt it. The smooth cylinder of a navigation core, still warm from residual power. Got it. He pulled, but frost had welded it to the housing. We need to thaw it, Sola said, carefully. If the quantum processors crack... I know. He adjusted the torch to minimum while she monitored temperature through a handheld scanner. Time stretched. Sweat ran down his back despite the cold. "Now," Sola said, "try now." The core slid free with a grinding sound. He held it up, undamaged, status lights active. "Beautiful," she breathed, and the way she said it made him think she wasn't just talking about the technology. They stood, and Rhett caught movement in his peripheral vision. He turned, scanning the ice field. "What is it?" Sola asked. "Thought I saw something." Her ears swiveled, tracking sounds he couldn't hear. Then she followed his gaze, and every muscle in her body went rigid. 3 ships descended through the clouds, sleek and predatory, bearing the opalescent sheen of vain diplomatic craft. They moved in a search pattern, scanning the surface. "No," she whispered. "Who are they?" "My betrothed, Derek Keshter." She grabbed his arm, fingers digging in. "Rhett, you have to hide me, please." "What are you talking about?" The ships adjusted course, triangulating on their position. Panic crept into Sola's eyes. "I'm fleeing an arranged marriage," she said, words tumbling out fast. "Derek is powerful, politically connected. When I refused the wedding, he called it kidnapping, claimed I was taken against my will. My family believes him because it's easier than admitting I'd choose exile over duty." Rhett stared at her. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. My shuttle did malfunction. I sabotaged it myself to cover my tracks, but everything else was true." Her hand found his face. "And what happened between us last night was real. All of it." The ships grew larger, weapons ports opening. "Why should I help you?" he asked. "Because you're human," she said, "and humans don't leave people behind." She was right, and she knew it, and the fact that she'd played that card made him want to walk away. But the ships were landing now, and armed figures emerged, and Sola looked at him with something raw and desperate. "Run," he said. They sprinted across the ice. Behind them, voices called out, orders, demands. Warning shots cracked the air, plasma bolts vaporizing ice in bursts of steam. "There," Rhett shouted, pointing to volcanic rock that had resisted the freeze. They dove into the rocks as more shots followed. He pulled her deeper into the maze, navigating by instinct and years of surviving hostile worlds. They emerged into a small cave, barely large enough for both of them. Outside, footsteps crunched on ice, multiple pursuers spreading out. Sola pressed against him, breathing hard. Her scent surrounded him, and despite everything, the betrayal, the danger, the soldiers hunting them, his body responded to her proximity. "I'm sorry," she whispered against his chest. "I should have told you." "Yes, you should have." "Would you have helped me if you'd known?" "I don't know. I couldn't risk it. Derek would have killed you if he found you harboring me willingly." "And now? Now he'll kill you anyway." Footsteps passed close. A voice called out, commanding and cold. Sola flinched. "That's Commander Voss," she breathed. "Derek's personal enforcer. Military-trained. Ruthless." "How many?" 6, maybe 8, all armed with plasma rifles. Rhett calculated odds he didn't like. "We need to reach my ship. They'll see us the moment we leave cover. Then we wait for the temperature to rise. They won't be prepared for the heat shift." Her eyes widened. "That's insane. I thought we established humans were insane." Despite everything, she almost smiled, then her hand found his. "Why are you helping me, after I lied?" "Because you were right," he said. "We don't leave people behind, even people who manipulate us." "I didn't," she stopped, jaw tightening. "That's fair." More footsteps, closer. They pressed deeper into the cave, and Sola's body molded against his. Her face tilted up, mouth inches from his. "When we get off this planet," she whispered, "I'll answer any question you have. All of them. The truth. That's a start. And I'll find a way to make this right." The footsteps receded. Outside, the temperature had already climbed 10 degrees. Sweat broke across Rhett's forehead. "How long can they last in the heat?" he asked. 20 minutes, maybe less. Their suits are designed for moderate climates. "Us?" "Longer, if we move smart." Rhett checked his chrono. "We move when it hits 40. Stay low, use the steam for cover." They waited, bodies pressed together in the dark. Despite the fear and anger, Rhett couldn't ignore the way she fit against him, the way her tail had wrapped around his leg, the way her fingers traced patterns on his chest. "Rhett," she said softly. "Don't. I need to say this. What I feel for you isn't strategy, it isn't manipulation. I've spent my entire life being told what to feel, what to want, who to marry. Being with you is the first choice I've made that's purely mine." He looked down at her, saw truth in her eyes. "That doesn't make the lie okay." "I know, but it makes it understandable." Her breath hitched. "Does that mean you forgive me?" "It means I'm not leaving you to them." She kissed him then, quick and fierce, and pulled back before he could respond. The temperature hit 40. Steam rose in curtains from melting ice, and outside someone shouted in distress. They emerged into a wall of vapor. Visibility dropped to 3 meters. Rhett grabbed Sola's hand and ran, navigating by memory and the beacon signal from his ship. Behind them, voices called out, confused and panicked. The van soldiers hadn't prepared for this. Sola stumbled. Rhett caught her and kept moving. His ship appeared through the steam, hatch open. Plasma fire erupted from their left. Someone had spotted them. "Go!" Rhett shouted, pushing Sola toward the ramp. She ran, and he turned, pulling his weapon, a simple projectile pistol. He fired twice, heard someone curse, and sprinted after her. They hit the hatch together. Rhett slammed the control, and metal sealed as plasma bolts struck the hull outside. Inside, Sola collapsed against the bulkhead, pulling off her helmet. Rhett moved to the cockpit, powering up systems. "They're retreating," he said, watching the feeds. The heat drove them back. "They won't leave," Sola said, appearing beside him. "Derek will wait, block any escape. Then we fix my navigation system fast and punch through." She held up the core. "How long?" 2 hours, maybe 3. "We don't have 3 hours." Rhett took the core from her hands. "Then I work fast." Her hand caught his wrist. "I'm sorry for all of this. What I deserve is answers. Later." He pulled away, moving toward the engineering bay. "Right now, I deserve to get us off this planet alive." She followed, and as he began integrating the vein core with his ship's systems, she sat close, offering tools and technical knowledge. They worked in focused silence, and Rhett felt something shift between them. Trust, maybe, or the foundation of it. Outside, the temperature climbed towards 60 degrees. The ship's cooling system struggled, but the navigation system slowly came online, quantum processors syncing with human technology. "Almost there," Rhett said, making final connections. "They're powering weapons," Sola said from the cockpit. "Rhett, they're going to fire on us." 30 more seconds. "We don't have 30 seconds." The navigation system flickered, stabilized, went green. Rhett ran to the cockpit, hands flying over controls, firing engines that screamed as they fought to lift off from superheated ground. The ship rose, plasma fire streaked past, and one bolt struck their starboard shield, overloading it instantly. Alarms blared. "Hold together," Rhett muttered, pushing the engines harder. Sola's hand gripped his shoulder as they climbed through atmosphere, as pursuit craft launched behind them, as everything became speed and fire and desperate mathematics. The planet fell away, stars appeared, and ahead, open space beckoned. They weren't safe yet, but they were alive. The pursuit ships closed fast, 3 sleek hunters against Rhett's battered surveyor. Alarms screamed as targeting locks painted his hull, and the damaged shield flickered uselessly. "They're hailing us," Sola said, voice tight. "Rhett, if we don't respond, Derek will assume you're holding me hostage. He'll destroy us." "And if we do respond, he'll demand I return. When I refuse, he'll destroy us anyway." Rhett yanked the controls hard, diving toward the planet's outer atmosphere, where heat and debris from the megastorms created interference. The ship groaned, hull temperature spiking as they skimmed the atmospheric boundary. "What are you doing?" Sola gripped the console, tail whipping for balance, using what they're not prepared for. The pursuit ships followed, but their formation spread wider, uncertain. Rhett drove deeper, letting turbulence buffet them, using the chaos. His hands moved across controls with precision born from years of threading needles through disaster. Plasma fire lanced past, missing wide as turbulence threw off their targeting. Rhett pulled up hard, engines screaming, and one pursuit ship dipped too deep. It caught a thermal updraft and spun violently before its pilot regained control. "They're trying to box us in from above," Sola said, watching tactical displays. "Then we go through them. That's suicide. You have a better idea?" She met his eyes, something fierce sparking there. "Actually, yes. Their communication array operates on a rotating frequency. If we can jam it at the right moment, they'll lose coordination for approximately 40 seconds. "How do you know their comm specs?" "I grew up around these ships. Derek used to brag about his fleet's capabilities." Her fingers flew across the console. "Give me access to your communications array." Rhett routed the controls. 40 seconds isn't much. "It's enough if you fly like you mean it." The ship burst from atmosphere at full burn, climbing straight into the pursuit formation. Sola's hands danced across her console, and suddenly the enemy ships broke formation, their coordinated movements dissolving into confusion. Rhett didn't hesitate. He punched through the gap, rolling to avoid wild plasma fire as pilots tried tracking them without linked targeting. One bolt grazed their hull, peeling off armor plating, but then they were through, open space ahead. "Jump coordinates locked," Sola said. "We need 15 more seconds for the quantum drive to charge." The pursuit ships recovered, reforming behind them, targeting locks reacquired. "Charging," Rhett said, watching power levels climb with agonizing slowness. 10 seconds. 9. "Incoming fire," Sola warned. Rhett threw the ship into an evasive spiral. Plasma fire filled the space where they'd been. 5 seconds. 4. "Rhett," Sola said, and the way she said his name made him glance at her. She stared at something on her console, face gone pale beneath blue skin. "What?" "That's Derek's personal ship, the lead vessel." 3 seconds. "So?" "He's charging his main cannon. That weapon can punch through station shielding. Our hull won't." "I know." 2 seconds. The tactical display showed massive energy building, a weapon designed to cripple capital ships now aimed at their fragile surveyor. 1 second. "Come on," Rhett growled. 0. The universe folded. Reality twisted sideways, and Epsilon Grave 7 vanished along with the pursuit ships and Derek's charged weapon. They tumbled through quantum space, that strange knot place between stars where physics became suggestions. Rhett killed the throttle. Silence descended, broken only by ragged breathing and cooling tick of overstressed engines. "We made it," Sola said, disbelief coloring her voice. "For now." She turned to him, and suddenly the narrow cockpit felt even smaller. Adrenaline still flooded his system, making everything sharper. The way her chest rose and fell rapidly, the way her ears swiveled toward him, the way her eyes had darkened. "You could have left me," she said. "On the planet, in the cave, a dozen times during that fight you could have saved yourself." "I don't abandon people." "It's more than that." She stood, moving closer. "You risked everything for someone who lied to you. Why?" Rhett met her gaze. "You really want to know?" "Yes. Because when I saw those ships coming for you, when I saw how scared you were, I realized something." He stood too, and now they were chest to chest. "You're running from the same thing I've been running from my whole life." "What's that?" "Someone else's plan for who we're supposed to be." Her breath caught. "Rhett, you want the truth? Here it is. I survey Deathworlds because nobody expects anything from me out here. No family legacy, no corporate ladder, no political marriages. Just me and planets that don't care about anything except whether I'm strong enough to survive them." His hand traced the line of her jaw. "When I look at you, I see someone fighting for that same freedom. And yeah, you lied. But I understand why." "I'm still sorry." "I know." She kissed him then, and this time there was no interruption, no storm or danger to pull them apart. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Rhett's arms wrapped around her waist, feeling the heat of her skin through the flight suit. She tasted like desperation and relief and something sweeter underneath. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, her tail had wrapped around his leg again. "We can't stay in quantum space long," she said, voice rough. "Eventually they'll calculate our trajectory, figure out where we'll emerge." "I know, I'm taking us to Havoc Station. It's neutral territory, outside Coalition jurisdiction." "Havoc Station has a reputation." So do we, apparently. He moved back to the controls, but she caught his hand. After Havoc Station, what then? I'm a fugitive. You're harboring me. Derek won't stop, and my family will side with him because an alliance with House Keshtor is worth more than my happiness. Then we keep running. For how long? As long as it takes. She studied his face, searching. You'd do that? Give up your work, your life to help me escape a marriage? I'd do that to help you stay free, he corrected. There's a difference. Something shifted in her expression, vulnerability mixing with wonder. No one's ever chosen me over convenience before. Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people. She laughed, but it sounded close to a sob. I don't deserve you. Probably not, I'm still helping. This time when she kissed him, it was softer, deeper, full of promise rather than desperation. Rhett let himself fall into it, hands exploring the curves of her body, feeling her arch against him with a sound that sent fire through his veins. We should rest, she murmured against his mouth, while we can. Probably. Neither of them moved. They made their way to the bunk eventually, exhaustion finally overwhelming adrenaline. Sola curled against him, head on his chest, tail draped across his legs. Her breathing gradually steadied, and Rhett felt her relax into sleep. He stared at the ceiling, running calculations. Havoc Station was 12 hours away. After that, they'd need to disappear properly. New identities, a ship that couldn't be traced, work that kept them moving. But as Sola shifted closer in her sleep, murmuring something in her own language, Rhett decided he didn't care about Easy. Easy was surveying empty planets and going home to empty quarters. This, her warmth against him, her trust despite everything, this felt like the first real thing he'd had in years. The quantum drive hummed its strange song. Stars waited on the other side, and somewhere among them was a future they'd have to build from scratch. Rhett closed his eyes and let himself believe they could do it. Havoc Station materialized through the viewport like a mechanical beast, all jagged angles and mismatched sections, a patchwork of salvaged ships and stolen tech orbiting a dead star. No government flags flew here, no customs checks or entry protocols, just the kind of place where questions weren't asked and credits talked louder than law. Rhett guided the ship toward a docking bay marked by flickering neon. Sola stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, tension radiating through her. Stay close to me, he said. Havoc doesn't take kindly to nobility. I can handle myself. I know, but let me do the talking anyway. The ship settled onto worn deck plating with a groan. Outside, figures moved through the bay, rough traders, mercenaries with visible weapons, species from a dozen worlds all unified by their mutual disregard for civilized society. They descended the ramp together, a figure detached from shadows, humanoid but not human, with mottled gray skin. Docking fee, it said, voice like grinding metal. 200 credits, another 500 for discretion. Rhett handed over his credit chip without argument. They moved through corridors, passing gambling dens and weapon shops, medical bays that promised no questions asked. Sola kept her hood up, but her tail gave her away as Van. Eyes tracked them, calculating. Rhett found what he needed in a corner establishment that functioned more as a clearinghouse for everything illegal. The proprietor was human, with cybernetic eyes that glowed faint blue. Rhett Hawking, the man said, recognition immediate, heard you were dead on some ice ball. Rumors of my demise were premature. The cybernetic eyes shifted to Sola. And you brought expensive company, Ven nobility, judging by that coloring. We need passage off station, Rhett said. Quiet passage, and new identification for both of us. That's not cheap. I didn't expect it to be. The proprietor leaned back, assessing them. There's a ship leaving in 6 hours. Freelance hauler headed for the outer reaches. Captain doesn't care about passengers as long as they pay. How much? 3,000 credits, each another 2 for the IDs. Rhett felt his stomach sink. He had maybe 4,000 total. That's the price of not being found, the proprietor interrupted. Or you can take your chances with station security. I hear there's a substantial bounty on runaway Ven nobility. Sola's hand tightened on Rhett's arm. He felt her fear and made a decision that went against every survival instinct. We'll take it, he said. but I need work to make up the difference. Fast work. The proprietor's smile showed too many teeth. There's a salvage job, automated mining station on the inner edge of the Hellion belt. No crew, no witnesses, just equipment that needs retrieving before creditors seize it. What's the catch? The belt is called Hellion for a reason. Radiation storms, asteroid collisions, debris fields that'll shred anything not built like a battleship. Your ship won't survive it. Then what do you suggest? Take the station's salvage runner. Fast, shielded, built for exactly this kind of stupidity. You bring back the mining equipment. You keep 10,000 credits, more than enough for your passage and IDs. Rhett looked at Sola. She met his gaze with acceptance and trust. How long do I have? 4 hours. Any longer and you miss your ride-off station. I'll do it. We'll do it, Sola corrected. The proprietor laughed. The vain princess wants to risk her pretty neck in a radiation belt? I'm not a princess, Sola said, voice cold, and I don't abandon my partners. Something passed between her and Rhett then, understanding that went beyond words. They'd survived a Deathworld together. They'd outrun a fleet. One more task wouldn't break them. The salvage runner was fast, barely maintained, and held together with optimism and prayer. Rhett ran pre-flight checks while Sola studied navigation data, plotting the safest route through the belt's chaos. There's a window in the radiation storms, she said. 90 minutes where intensity drops enough that we won't be cooked alive, but we have to be precise. Precision is my specialty. Rhett, she turned to him, vulnerable in the harsh light. If something goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, I want you to know that these past days with you have been the freest I've ever felt. Whatever happens next, I don't regret any of it. He pulled her close, kissing her hard and deep, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. We're getting out of this, he said, both of us, together. Together, she echoed. They launched into the belt, and immediately the universe tried to kill them. Asteroids tumbled past in chaotic trajectories. Rhett piloted with every ounce of skill he possessed, dodging, weaving, threading gaps while Sola called out hazards in calculated vectors. The mining station appeared through debris, a skeletal structure clinging to a massive asteroid. Rhett brought the runner alongside, matching velocity, and began extracting the mining cores. Radiation storm incoming, Sola warned. 15 minutes. I need 20. Rhett? I know, just keep tracking it. His hands worked quickly, disconnecting power couplings and loading cores into the cargo bay. Sweat ran down his back. 12 minutes. 10. We need to go now, Sola said, voice urgent. Last one, almost. The final core came free. Got it! They broke away as the radiation storm hit, invisible waves of deadly particles that made sensors scream. Rhett poured everything into the engines, racing ahead of the storm front while Sola rerouted power to shields. The runner shuddered, alarms blared, and then they were through, breaking clear with cargo intact. 4 hours on the dot, Rhett said, checking his chrono. Back at the station, the proprietor transferred the credits without comment. Rhett immediately paid for their passage and IDs, watching his entire savings vanish. But when the false identification chips appeared, credible enough to pass casual inspection, he felt something close to hope. Your transport leaves from Bay 7, the proprietor said. Don't be late. They had 30 minutes. Rhett and Sola returned to his ship one last time, gathering what few possessions mattered. He ran his hand along the bulkhead, saying goodbye to the vessel that had been his home and freedom for years. It's just a ship, Sola said softly. It was my ship. And now we'll find another one, together. They made their way to Bay 7, where a battered hauler sat waiting, its cargo holds already loaded with legitimate freight that would provide cover. The captain was a grizzled veteran who looked them over once and asked no questions. As the hauler pulled away from Havoc Station, as the patchwork beast shrank in the viewport, Rhett felt Sola's hand find his. They stood together watching the station recede, two fugitives heading into an uncertain future with nothing but each other. Where do we go from here, she asked. Somewhere they'll never think to look. Somewhere dangerous enough that only humans would be crazy enough to try colonizing. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Another Deathworld. Maybe. Or maybe we find something different, something that's ours. I'd like that. The hauler's engines hummed, carrying them away from everything they'd known. Behind them lay obligations and expectations, arranged marriages and survey contracts, the whole machinery of civilizations that had tried to make them into something they weren't. Ahead lay only possibility. Rhett pulled Sola closer, and she turned in his arms, kissing him with hunger that spoke of new beginnings rather than desperate endings. When they finally broke apart, her amber eyes held promises he intended to keep. "Thank you," she whispered, "for choosing me." "Always," he said, "every time." Outside, stars wheeled past in their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas of those who traveled between them. But inside the hauler, in the warm space they'd carved out for themselves, Rhett and Sola built something that mattered more than stars or stations or the opinions of those who'd never understand. They built a future worth fighting for.